Hello, welcome back to Raising Arrows Mama. My name is Heather, Mama to 8, and today I want to talk to you about another component in the Knowledge of God series. If you've been watching along, I have told about the different components that I consider knowledge of God that point my homeschool classroom and my children towards the Lord. And you can go back to those previous videos, and I'm taking this from Charlotte Mason's actual quote that the knowledge of God is priority, it's primary. She says in multiple texts, various versions of that is our focus. That is our first and foremost thing in our home education. And in our education, if you're in a school setting, is to teach them to know God and to love Him. And so she has in her Volume 6, she points out that Bible lessons are the key way to do that. And they are, of course. The Bible is the perfect way. But I believe that there are some other components of the Charlotte Mason curriculum that she puts in other places that actually can also be leading our children towards the knowledge of God. And those are Bible lessons, like I said, hymns, scripture memory and recitation. And today what I want to talk about is what I call Christian readings. Christian readings I put in two kind of categories: biographies and just books that have a Christian focus. And I'm going to actually start with that because I think a lot of you have heard of what I feel about biographies, but I'll get to those at the end. Christian readings are really just books that are going to point our children back to the Lord and the ways of the Lord. And the best example that I come up with is Pilgrim's Progress. Now, our family is a bit unique in that, as I said, I'm Heather, if I didn't say that. I have 8 children, and they're kind of stair steps. And for many years before I started creating my own curriculum, I was using various Charlotte Mason's inspired curriculums, and then I was adding in some of the Ambleside online books because I just felt the other curriculums weren't challenging enough. And so in doing so, I realized that second grade is when they read Pilgrim's Progress, not independently. And so with my first, I started reading Pilgrim's Progress. I had no clue what was going on. And it didn't help. I have this, all my things are boxed up at the moment, or I would be showing you these books. I'll try to pop a picture up here. But I had a tiny book with tiny text, and I had no clue who was talking. I didn't even know what the story was supposed to be about. I just knew, it was mentioned in Little Women. That's all I knew about it. And so I struggled through that first reading. Then the next year, I realized, I'm going to have a second grader again next year. So I probably should figure out what it's about because I was really dreading reading it. So in that in-between year of second graders, I picked up Little Pilgrim's Progress and read it to our family. All of my kids loved it. Now, I know there is a beautiful new version out, and it has a little rabbit on the cover and all these things. We just had one that had almost no pictures. It's a very old copy that my mother-in-law gave me. And you know what? It was awesome. It made the whole book make sense to all of us. And so my husband and I took turns reading that at bedtime because, as I said, we didn't just do it for our second graders. We read it for the whole family, realizing it would be beneficial. And we were able to understand the story now. Everything made sense. In Little Pilgrim's Progress, you're basically following the same story as Christian in the original Pilgrim's Progress, but he's a child and things are written in a much more clear, modern kind of language that makes it easier for you to understand the plot line and the story as we go through and we follow little Christian and then later Christiana. And so we read through Little Pilgrim's Progress that third year. So then the fourth year came around and I got a second grader again, and I was still trying to tie in a lot of Ambleside online books. So we read Pilgrim's Progress again as a family. It was magical that second time. The book made so much more sense because we understood what was going on. I could figure out who was talking. I was still using my little tiny print, and to this day, I still have that little tiny book with the little tiny print. And we were able to read it. We were able to make sense of it. Even my young kids were able to understand large portions of it and be able to narrate because we had done the groundwork with Little Pilgrim's Progress. It was wonderful. So we read that with all of our family. Well, then I have another in-between year. What am I going to do? I don't really want to read Little Pilgrim's Progress again. I picked up Dangerous Journey. Dangerous Journey is, I'll pop a picture up here. It is a picture book, but it is not for the faint of heart. The artist does an amazing, amazing job of showing you these scary beings, and particularly the fight with Apollyon in this Valley of the Shadow of Death it's a disturbing image, and some of my children can't handle that part of the book, and so I don't show them that part of the book when I read it. The other challenge with Dangerous Journey is then it has actual excerpts from the original Pilgrim's Progress to tell the story. It is much shortened. There are some connections between it, but it does have a lot of those original texts. And if you're struggling with the language, that may not be the best journey for you, or journey may not be the best choice for you. But Dangerous Journey is a wonderful, phenomenal book. I love it. I love the picture book. I've used it in my Sunday school classroom to tell the story and to point out the key elements of walking in this way towards the Lord. But just so you know, if you have very sensitive children or anything like that, some pictures are a little bit scary, but the pictures are phenomenal. They're just a little disturbing for the sensitive ones. And so then the next year we read Pilgrim's Progress again. And guess what? It made sense. My older ones were still drawing new things, just as I was, getting more and more from it. And my little ones could follow along because they knew the basic story from Dangerous Journey. And then the middle ones kind of remembered Little Pilgrim's Progress. And so then we read through. So that was our third time through the original Pilgrim's Progress with Little Pilgrim's Progress in between and Dangerous Journey. What are we going to do? Do we pick up Little Pilgrim's Progress again? We did. We picked up Little Pilgrim's Progress again, and we went through it, and that helped my middle grade kids kind of understand what we had read, and also my other kids. And then before I picked up Pilgrim's Progress again for a fourth time through, I actually found Little Pilgrim's Big Journey from Lithos Kids. And some people don't like the artwork in that one because it's computer generated. It's very comic-y, cartoony. But can I tell you a secret? My little kids devour it. We only have books 1 and 2. I'm hoping to get book 3 this school year. They are hardbound, beautiful books. I love how they tell the story of Pilgrim, but as a way littler kid and way more simplified. And then it has some wonderful discussion points at the end. And my current 7-year-old, because we did this when she was 5, she devoured that book. The binding is coming off of it, not because she was rough with it, but because she read it so many times. She couldn't read exactly yet, but she knew the story because she just went through it. I read it to her multiple times. My older sisters read it to her several times. We read it as a family once, but she became obsessed and loved it. She just loved the story. And so when we started that fall, because they're very short, we did it just for a summer, I believe, and maybe part of the spring. When we went back for round number 4 of the actual Pilgrim's Progress, my 5-year-old knew what was happening because she had read Little Pilgrim's Big Journey. And so that was phenomenal. She was able to join in the discussion, like, why was he locked up? How did they get out of Doubting Castle? And why was the giant, what do you think it meant when he had his fits? And why did the sunlight bother him? It was just awesome. I highly recommend it. And then, And so Pilgrim's Progress has been wonderful. However, in the last 8 years, we've now read Pilgrim's Progress, the original 4 times. And we've done Little Pilgrim's Progress twice. We've done Dangerous Journey and Little Pilgrim's Big Journey multiple times. And so we were looking for something else. And so we are using Kingdom Tales, which we had purchased a long time ago. Actually, my mother-in-law gave it to me. And it was also part of another curriculum we used. And my kids really loved those. So in Kingdom Tales, I haven't finished it. My oldest has. We are following some various characters, and you have like a land that's by an evil guy who they do everything at night because daylight they say is evil, and this, I forget what they call him. He's like a sorcerer of some sort. And these 2 orphan kids escape, and they're into the forest land. And in the forest land, there's a king, and there's a whole lot going on. And I don't know exactly things, but it does have all these Christian kind of, not moral stories, but stories that point you towards Christian beliefs and things like that. And so we're enjoying that. I'll let you know when we finish it how it sums up. But other Christian readings that I incorporate are for my older kids, and that includes How to Be Your Own Selfish Pig by is it Sonia Schaefer? Edith Schaefer? I don't remember. It's one of the Schaefers. And we use that, and that is do not use that for your younger kids. That is for older kids. It has some harder topics you definitely want to pre-read. In this, you're basically posing different questions, and she's using her experience at L'Abri Fellowship, which is where people would go when they were questioning their world, and they would want to know more about these people. And it was ran by Christians who shared the gospel but weren't like ramming it down their throat or anything. They let them question. They let them think. And in this book, you get an introduction to some of that. I do remember there being one that was about suicide, and there are a couple other harder topics in there. So you definitely want to pre-read it before you read it with your kids. I use it with middle school age children, with some discretion depending on the child. Another great book for older, usually high school, is getting into Pursuit of God. A.W. Tozer's, C.S. Lewis, some of their works are great for some Christian readings for those older kids. My daughter, freshman year, did Case for Christ and loved it. That was a great introduction to some of these harder Christian readings that she'll be doing in these other upper years. And there's a plethora of other books that are Christian-like. So I highly recommend those. And then last but not least are biographies. You know, I love biographies. I have lots of videos about how we utilize biographies. But following these Christian heroes is a great way to get some Christian reading in. I love the YWAM series specifically. I haven't read this one yet. This is a new one we just picked up. Jim Elliott, love that. But Heroes of the Faith series is great. Their autobiographies are phenomenal. And I have lots of videos about biographies. If you're looking for a specific person or specific biography, drop it below and I'll try to comment. If you have an amazing Christian biography or amazing Christian book that you recommend for your homeschool, I ask that you drop that below in the comments. And as always, if you have any questions, let me know. And thank you so much for watching. I know this was a little bit longer video, but I hope that this helps you to find ways to use your homeschool classroom to point your children towards the knowledge of God and how good and wonderful He is. Thank you again for watching and have a blessed day.